The world's longest undefended border, once a symbol of easy crossings and reliable friendship, is feeling a new chill. What was once a seamless line stretching over 5,500 miles, marked only by the occasional sign or checkpoint, is now at the center of growing uncertainty. For generations, the US-Canada line was more suggestion than barrier, a place where families, friends, and businesses moved back and forth with little worry. But now, tensions are rising and the sense of ease is fading. President Trump's administration has shifted the tone dramatically, using words like tariffs and national security threat against Canada, America's closest ally. This rhetoric has introduced a new level of suspicion and caution into a relationship that was once defined by trust. This isn't just political noise, it's real tension, leaving people on both sides confused and concerned. Neighbors who once took their cross-border ties for granted now find themselves questioning what the future holds. Tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum have shocked Canadians, turning a trusted partnership into a source of friction. Industries that relied on open trade are now facing uncertainty, and workers worry about their livelihoods. The rhetoric has grown sharp, and the easy flow of people and goods is now under threat. Delays at border crossings are becoming more common, and businesses on both sides are feeling the pinch. For Canadians, being labeled a security risk by the US is jarring, changing the very nature of the relationship. Many feel a sense of betrayal, as if decades of cooperation and shared values have suddenly been called into question. Small towns along the border feel the consequences most, as political sparring in capitals trickles down to daily life. Local businesses, families, and even schools that straddle the border are forced to adapt to new realities. The once predictable relationship is now fragile, and no one is sure what comes next. Diplomats and officials are left searching for common ground, but trust is harder to rebuild than it is to lose. The new policies are testing a friendship that was long taken for granted. The contrast between past warmth and present tension is stark, and the outcome remains uncertain. As leaders exchange threats, ordinary citizens are left to navigate the fallout. Families worry about visiting relatives, and travelers face new hurdles that didn't exist before. The partnership that defined the border is at risk of unraveling. What was once a model of international cooperation now stands at a crossroads, with its future hanging in the balance. The stage is set for a challenging new chapter in US-Canada relations. As the sun rises over the border, both nations must decide whether to rebuild trust or let old wounds deepen. For Alaska, the US-Canada border is a lifeline, a vital artery that connects the state to the outside world and sustains its communities. It's not just a line on a map, but a gateway that shapes the daily reality for thousands of Alaskans. Alaska's only road access to the rest of the US runs through Canada, making good relations with its neighbor absolutely essential for everything from commerce to family visits. Political tensions and talk of tariffs aren't abstract here. They're a direct threat to daily life, affecting everything from the price of goods to the ability to travel freely. Imagine if your only road to groceries, medical care, or even to visit family ran through a country now at odds with your government. For Alaskans, this is a constant concern. Alaskans fear that new tolls, stricter inspections, or sudden policy changes could choke off this vital corridor, disrupting lives and livelihoods overnight. Many Alaskan communities, especially in the Panhandle, are more connected to Canada than the rest of the US, relying on cross-border ties for everything from supplies to social events. Towns like Skagway and Haines depend on Canadian roads and tourism for survival, with local businesses thriving on the steady flow of Canadian visitors and goods. The current climate puts all of that at risk, creating a unique vulnerability that few other Americans ever have to consider. Geography means Alaskans feel the consequences of political disputes every day, as the border is never far from their minds or their routines. Their prosperity, stability, and even sense of community depend on a positive relationship with Canada, making diplomacy more than just a distant concern. The fear that politics could damage this partnership is very real, and it's a source of anxiety for families, businesses, and entire towns. For Alaska, the stakes are higher than almost anywhere else in the US, with the border shaping not just policy but the very fabric of daily life. The border isn't just a boundary, it's Alaska's lifeline, a thread that ties its people to the world beyond and holds the promise of connection, opportunity, and hope. Small towns along the US-Canada border are holding their breath. Their economies depend on open borders, Canadian shoppers, and cross-border business. New tariffs and trade war threats have sent waves of anxiety through these communities. A brewery in Washington might rely on Canadian barley, a Vermont hardware store on Quebec lumber. Tariffs mean higher costs, less competitiveness, and real threats to local businesses. In places like Point Roberts, Washington, and Skagway, Alaska, reliance on Canada is absolute. If Canadians stay home or border restrictions tighten, the economic impact could be devastating. The uncertainty is changing the spirit of these communities, turning partnership into worry. Residents fear not just for their wallets but for the loss of cross-border cooperation. The ripple effect of high-level disputes is felt most deeply in these vulnerable towns. The economic web that supported generations is now at risk. Rising US-Canada tensions aren't just about policy, they're personal. For border communities, political rhetoric feels like an attack on friends and neighbors. Many Canadians feel betrayed, seeing tariffs as a slap from a trusted ally. This emotional strain is changing behavior. More Canadians are avoiding US trips, impacting American businesses. The once friendly border is now tinged with resentment and division. Simple interactions are colored by politics, creating unease where there was once trust. The dispute seeps into daily life, driving a wedge between people. Still, many fight to keep personal connections strong, separating government actions from individual relationships. But constant negative headlines make it harder to maintain goodwill. The real cost is the erosion of trust and the rise of a psychological barrier. Where there was once openness, there's now uncertainty. The human cost is measured in lost friendships and fading goodwill. Amid political tension, some Canadians are choosing engagement over retreat. They turn trips to the US, especially Alaska, into informal diplomatic missions, showing that ordinary people value friendship over politics. The Buckwheat International Ski Classic near the Alaska-Yukon border is a perfect example. Despite boycotts, Canadians made up 70% of participants coming to celebrate, not protest. The event was apolitical, focused on fun and community, with nationalities forgotten in the joy of the race. This gathering proved that personal relationships can rise above political disputes. By showing up, Canadians sent a clear message: our friendship isn't for sale. These acts of grassroots diplomacy build bridges, not walls. They remind everyone that the US-Canada relationship is built on genuine affection, not just politics. Small acts of friendship, repeated across the border, are a powerful force for peace. In troubled times, these connections matter more than ever. Alaska isn't waiting for politics to cool down. They're reaching out to Canadians directly. Local leaders and businesses are sending a clear message: you're still welcome here. Alaska's economy, especially in border towns, depends on Canadian visitors. A Canadian boycott could devastate local businesses, so Alaskans are reaffirming their friendship. Community events like the Buckwheat Ski Classic are promoted as symbols of unity. These efforts go beyond words. Alaskans are showing their support through action. For a state as isolated as Alaska, maintaining good relations with Canada is essential. Leaders are working to separate local reality from national drama. By extending a hand of friendship, Alaskans hope to shield their communities from political fallout. The spirit of neighborliness is alive and well at the local level. The threat of a trade war casts a long shadow over border communities. Canada is ready to retaliate, targeting key US industries with tariffs. This could hit American farmers, manufacturers, and exporters hard, leading to lost revenue and jobs. British Columbia's premier even suggested tolls on goods bound for Alaska, a direct response to US policies. Such moves would be a logistical nightmare, raising costs for Alaskans and disrupting supply chains. The climate of uncertainty makes it hard for businesses to plan or invest. The smooth flow of commerce is now at risk. Once retaliation starts, it's hard to stop, threatening a prolonged economic conflict. The stakes are high for workers and consumers on both sides. Tariffs and trade war threats put key cross-border industries at risk, casting a shadow over the daily flow of goods and services that so many communities rely on. The North American auto industry is deeply integrated, with parts and components crossing the border multiple times before a single car is finished. This seamless movement is essential for keeping costs down and production lines running smoothly. Tariffs would disrupt these carefully coordinated supply chains, raise costs for manufacturers, and ultimately make cars more expensive for consumers on both sides of the border. The energy sector is also vulnerable. U.S. refineries depend heavily on Canadian crude oil, and new tariffs could threaten thousands of jobs, raise gas prices, and create uncertainty for workers and families. Small businesses are caught in the crossfire too. Breweries need Canadian barley for their craft beers, and builders rely on Canadian lumber to keep construction projects on track and affordable. Retailers in border towns depend on Canadian shoppers, whose spending supports local jobs and keeps small businesses afloat. For many of these businesses, tariffs could mean shrinking profits, layoffs, or even going out of business entirely. The economies of the US and Canada are so intertwined, it's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. Every day, millions of dollars in goods and services cross the border, supporting families and communities. Imposing tariffs is like using a sledgehammer to fix a watch. Unintended damage is inevitable, and the consequences can be far-reaching and difficult to repair. The risk is a widespread economic slowdown that hurts everyone, from factory workers to small business owners, and even consumers looking for affordable goods. The folly of a trade war between such close partners is clear. Cooperation, not conflict, is what keeps both nations strong. The livelihoods of workers and families on both sides of the border truly hang in the balance, making the stakes higher than ever. Despite political arguments and economic fears, a powerful counter-narrative is emerging along the border. Residents are choosing to look past headlines and focus on shared history and values. The bond between communities is more resilient than temporary political disagreements. Local events, ski races, hockey games, family gatherings continue, reminding everyone that the relationship is defined by people, not politicians. Canadians are making diplomatic efforts to maintain goodwill, showing commitment to the partnership. This grassroots movement sends a message of hope. Ordinary citizens can maintain peace and understanding. The foundation of the US-Canada relationship is millions of individual friendships. The determination to preserve these connections is a powerful force for stability. Even in high-level conflict, the spirit of neighborliness endures. The friendship between these two nations is built to last.